Ischgl has long been known as the Ibiza of the Alps. But this time last year, the Austrian ski resort became famous for something else.
You always think the worst, especially when you get a positive result for COVID.
I even got people on that last day coming in, like coughing and spluttering, and like saying, COVID.
The authorities were slow to lock down, with disastrous results.
There was a whiff of the old Jaws film and the mayor standing up in front of the TV cameras saying, "There's no shark here."
Ischgl became known as Europe's COVID ground zero. More than 6,000 people believe they were infected here in a matter of days. Tourists returning home exported the virus around the world. Now, the families of those affected are demanding justice.
Es ist doch ganz klar, Sie wissen genau, Sie haben einen riesen Fehler gemacht und das geben Sie einfach nicht zu.
Their allegation that local authorities put wealth over health, keeping peak ski season going, even as the virus spread. 1 year on, what lessons can be learned from the unhappy story of Ischgl?
We need to be expecting all kinds of different viruses. This is going to happen again, I can assure you.
Is carefree mass tourism as we know it in Europe a thing of the past? The ski season in Ischgl in early 2020 seemed pretty much perfect. Icelandic tourist Haraldur was one of the thousands enjoying the slopes.
We actually had a really good week. Ischgl is one of the best ski resorts in Europe. It has good variety of slopes and good restaurants.
After skiing, he and his friends grabbed a beer at the Kitzloch, one of Ischgl's famous après-ski bars.
Hundreds of people just having fun, drinking and singing.
There are a lot of different people from all over the world coming to Ischgl. Here in the Kitzloch especially, a lot of Danish, Norwegian, of course a lot of German people are coming, also a lot from the United Kingdom.
But last February, ski hire workers spotted something strange.
What we started to notice was that more and more customers who were bringing their skis back into the ski hire shop midweek, returning them early, was more of a case of, well, this is weird, this is not normal, why is this? Then you think, well, my God, this is a pretty rough flu season now.
Come and check this out with me today, huh? It's beautiful.
But it wasn't the flu, it was COVID. The virus had already been detected in the Italian Alps and elsewhere in Austria, and it was now in Ischgl. At that time, there was no coronavirus testing in the resort. For weeks, the authorities here had closed their eyes to the spread of the virus. Gunter Zangel is a leading local businessman. He owns Ischgl's cable car company.
Man hat natürlich registriert, dass in China ein neues Virus aufgetaucht ist, aber China ist sehr weit weg. Man hat sich natürlich nicht gewünscht, dass Ischgl quasi jetzt der erste Tourismusort ist, der vom Coronavirus betroffen ist. Das ist schon klar.
Haraldur's friend Arnie was one of those who became unwell in late February.
He started feeling ill on Wednesday. He thought he had the flu. We were not associating his illness with COVID.
On their return to Iceland, both Haraldur and Arnie tested positive.
I was not feeling ill or anything, so it was quite a shock because the news from Italy wasn't great. Lots of people dying there, so you always think the worst, especially when you get a positive result for COVID.
In Reykjavik, the test results landed on the desk of Iceland's chief epidemiologist. For weeks, he'd been watching the spread of coronavirus from China, and now he knew he needed to act fast.
I was excited, actually, because we have been preparing for this for many, many years.
Dr. Gudnason began to spot a pattern. The majority of Iceland's positive cases had been on holiday in Ischgl. Austria appeared to have a much bigger COVID problem than it realised.
It was kind of strange to me at that time that officially there were only few cases reported from Austria, the whole country. So something really didn't match, actually.
Dr. Gudnason raised the alarm. He reported the COVID cases to the European Union and sent a direct message to his Austrian counterparts. Iceland's government then put Ischgl in the same travel category as Wuhan. It's what happens next that's still so hotly contested. The regional government in Austria's Tyrol province now faced a major crisis, which would end up costing both lives and money. For years, they'd marketed Ischgl as a good time ski resort. Many local businesses rely on the ski season for their annual income. COVID threatened all that. Rather than lock Ischgl down, the authorities issued a press release saying the Icelandic tourists had probably caught COVID on the plane home.
I mean, that's just total nonsense. My friend was already sick while we were in Ischgl, and there is no way that all of us got infected on the flight because we were not all traveling together.
An email sent at the time showed that local Tyrol politicians hoped the plane theory would be enough to get Ischgl out of the firing line, as they wrote. The recipient of the email subsequently leaked, but not denied, was Herbert Forster.
Das war keine ganz unplausible Erklärung. Nachdem wir damals auch nicht viel mehr Informationen gehabt haben, war das eine Erklärung, wo sich die Isländer angesteckt haben.
So Ischgl wasn't shut down, and no warnings were issued to skiers. Saturday the 7th of March was changeover day. Thousands of tourists were going home, thousands more arriving. Perfect conditions for a highly contagious virus to spread. British couple David Mills and Christine Harris were amongst the new arrivals.
The place was great. It was buzzing. It was like Benidorm on steroids. And when we got there, we thought, whoa, this was so busy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was absolutely jam-packed. All the bars were on like a strip, and we went into several of them. One of them was a kids' locker.
You couldn't
get a drink.
Couldn't
We
get a
walked
drink,
right
couldn't
round the
go.
bar.
That evening, the manager of the Kitzloch bar, Bernard Sangel, got a phone call. Hours before, one of his staff had had a COVID test after feeling ill.
I was not watching on the phone, and in the evening at about 9 or 10 o'clock, I had about maybe 10 phone calls on my phone, and I was thinking, okay, what is going on?
The test was positive. It meant the authorities could no longer put off taking action.
Yeah, of course I was a shock. We were sitting after this information then with my colleagues at the bar, and we were talking about the topic, and everybody was kind of shocked.
The Kitzloch bar closed, but only for 24 hours. They were told they could reopen once they disinfected the venue and changed over the staff. Meanwhile, all the other bars in Ischgl stayed open. The regional government put out another press release stating that the virus was unlikely to spread in bars. Their actions had fatal consequences.
Ich verstehe es vor allen Dingen. Ich kann einfach nicht verstehen, warum das Schicksal uns so zugesetzt hat, weil wir waren so glücklich.
Dörte Sittig's partner Rudi had gone on holiday to Ischgl from Germany in March.
Ich habe irgendwie, warum auch immer, ein ganz komisches Gefühl gehabt. Und ich wollte einfach nicht, dass er fährt.
In the days after he returned home, Rudi began to feel ill.
Also für ihn war das so, ich habe ein gutes Immunsystem und ein bisschen mit Rum und Honig wird es schon alles klappen.
Rudi thought he'd picked up the flu, but it was COVID.
Der hatte wirklich schwerste Atemnot, der konnte kaum Luft kriegen.
He was taken to hospital, where his condition deteriorated.
Und dann kriegte ich irgendwann den Oberarzt und der mir dann sagte, ach so, ja, Sie sind Frau Sittig, die Lebensgefährtin von Herrn Lempig, ja. Ja, wir haben bei Herrn Lempig keine Illusionen mehr. Und dieser Satz, den werde ich nie in meinem Leben mehr vergessen. Und da bin ich völlig ausgerastet. Ich sage, was ist passiert?
Daughter was by Rudy's side when his life support was turned off.
Konnten die das auf die Minute sagen, wann er stirbt? Und wir sind bei ihm gewesen und haben die Hand auf seinem Herzen gehabt, bis es aufgehört hat zu schlagen. Ne? Ja. So war das. Ja.
Now, daughter wants justice.
Ich habe einen meiner liebsten Menschen verloren. Den kriege ich nie wieder. So, und da gibt es ja noch mehrere. Und es gibt so viele, die krank sind und auch gar nie wieder gesund werden.
She's joined a class action lawsuit on behalf of those who believe they got COVID in Ischgl and the relatives of those who died.
Und da kann doch nicht einfach so ein Land sagen, ja, weiß ich nicht, das ist doch nicht unsere Schuld. Die hätten ja nicht einreisen müssen. Das ist doch albern, oder?
Das ist unvorstellbar, in einer modernen Verwaltung so zu agieren.
That's what Peter Kolber believes. He's a consumer rights lawyer leading efforts to hold the Austrian government to account for what happened last year in Ischgl, and he says to try to prevent anything like this happening again.
Und daher klagen wir in Wien die Republik für das, was die Republik falsch gemacht hat.
It's one of many cases being brought against governments worldwide for the way they've handled the pandemic.
Man so in einer Pandemie nicht agieren darf. Man darf nicht die Wirtschaft oder die Ökonomie über die Gesundheit von Menschen stellen. Das ist aber in Tirol im März passiert. Man hat in Wahrheit zu spät gewarnt. Man hätte am 7. 8. März jedenfalls warnen müssen, nach Tirol zu kommen. Man hätte noch besser am 7. 8. März das Tal schließen sollen, eine Woche früher, als es dann passiert ist.
Had the authorities closed a week earlier, after the Icelandic tourist fell ill, thousands of people who arrived afterwards might have avoided infection. Take Nigel Malander.
I did actually check the Foreign Office travel advice before going. The Foreign Office said, it's okay to travel. So I thought, well, why not? I'll go and spend a few days skiing.
The bars in Ischgl were still wide open for business.
It was chock-a-block full of people. There was no indication at all that there was any problem in the town as far as coronavirus was concerned. It was just business as usual.
On Friday the 13th of March, 8 days after the alarm had been raised by Iceland, Austria's Chancellor Sebastian Kurz suddenly decided to bypass the local authorities in Tirol and take action himself.
Es werden daher das Paznauntal und St. Anton am Adelberg unter Quarantäne gestellt. Diese Gebiete werden ab sofort isoliert.
He announced that tourists had just 1 hour to leave Ischgl. Anyone left in the resort would be put in quarantine. What followed was utter chaos.
I got a phone call about 2 o'clock in the afternoon from the young lady at my hotel. And she said, you must get back here. You must leave the valley. The valley is being put into quarantine. So you must get back here and leave. And I thought, well, that's novel.
I was walking back towards the shop and a friend of mine came screeching up in his car. It was like a die-hard Bruce Willis like handbrake turn almost. They're closing the whole valley in an hour. If you don't get out now, you're not getting out at all. We need to get out, mate.
They threw everything in the suitcase and literally...
And it literally was throwing everything in the suitcase for you. And everybody was like, what's happening? What's going on?
So you imagine people screaming off in their cars, like driving at crowds and just going for the main road. And that was the thing that was like, on me, like, my God, this is people are like seriously panicking now. They're seriously frightened. And then I had the whole chaos of the shop to deal with. People were just coming in, didn't want to wait. They were just chucking their skis, like one after the other into the shop. Didn't care what was happening, chucked their boots into the door, chucking their skis. And I was like, oh my God. And, we had like 200 skis or so coming back that day. So I had no idea what was going on. I even got people on that last day coming in, like coughing and spluttering and like saying, COVID.
It wasn't just the tourists who were blindsided by the announcement. Gunther Zangel was on the local COVID management board.
Eine halbe Stunde bevor diese Ankündigung öffentlich gemacht wurde, erste Gerüchte bei uns im Umlauf waren, es könnte eine Quarantäne geben. Und ich muss auch ehrlich sagen, dass diese Gerüchte zum Beispiel ich persönlich überhaupt nicht ernst genommen habe. Und das war wirklich wie eine Ohrfeige. Das hat uns komplett auf dem falschen Fuß erwischt. Niemand hat mit dem gerechnet.
Tourists packed onto buses and coaches. Police roadblocks were set up to check who was leaving. But with no proper procedures in place, these checks led to huge delays.
It took from 5 o'clock till about midnight, wasn't it, before we got to... It was about a 7-hour coach trip. We were on that coach, it crawled down the mountain.
It's absolutely guaranteed that anybody that wasn't infected with the virus when they left Ischgl was probably absolutely drenched in it by the time they got down the valley.
The botched evacuation was the last in a string of costly mistakes by the Austrian authorities, local and national. It's thought that skiers returning home from Ischgl and surrounding resorts exported COVID to as many as 45 countries, as far-flung as Brazil and Australia. More than 6,000 people believed they were infected, and at least 16 people died. Within a week of getting back to Britain, David, Christine and Nigel all had COVID. Nigel was taken to hospital.
The girls were standing in the hallway, and there was a real feeling in my own mind. I thought, I'm walking out of my house now, and I didn't know whether I would be coming back on my feet or in a box.
1 year on, many of those caught up in the scarring events are still searching for answers. An independent inquiry detailed what it called momentous miscalculations in how the local authorities dealt with the virus at the time. Some of those involved now face a criminal investigation.
Es ging darum, abzuklären einmal, wer wann über was Bescheid gewusst hat und wie mit diesem Wissen umgegangen wurde.
So did the authorities intentionally put wealth over health?
The apparent lack of common sense in how they went about doing what they did. There was a whiff of the old Jaws film and the mayor of Amity Island standing up in front of the TV cameras saying, "There's no shark here."
Das sind ganz klare Fehler, die nur daraus entstanden sind, noch einen Tag und noch einen Tag und noch einen Tag offen zu halten und viel zu verdienen.
This is vigorously denied by the authorities in Ischgl and the wider Tyrol region.
Da gibt es auch eine große Verantwortung und in den Entscheidungen des Landes Tirol hat hier immer nur die Gesundheit eine Rolle gespielt, wie man ja eben an den Fakten dann gesehen hat.
Dorta is clear on where she believes responsibility lies.
Nur weil ein Corona-Kranker im Ort tobt, sage ich jetzt mal, oder 2, oder plötzlich hört man, es sind 10, bin ich doch als Hotelier oder als nicht derjenige, der irgendwie meinen Laden zumacht, weil er weiß, okay, das kommt eine Pandemie. Nein, das ist die Regierung. Ja. Also ist es doch ganz klar, Sie wissen genau, Sie haben einen riesen Fehler gemacht und das geben Sie einfach nicht zu.
The global tourism industry has already lost more than $1 trillion so far as a result of the pandemic. In Europe, Austria has been one of the countries hardest hit. Ischgl now lies deserted, but some here believe better times will soon return.
Wir sind auch optimistisch, auch was wir so an Feedback haben. Wir glauben schon, dass das Urlaubsbedürfnis auch künftig ein sehr großes sein wird und dass wir mit unserem Tourismus auch wieder Erfolg haben können.
Even after this pandemic ends, will travel and tourism ever return to what we once thought was normal?
Tourism and travel of people from one place to another has been very open and easy within Europe. And in my mind, that's probably played a big role. And the free movement of people from one area to another, it's going to be probably much more restricted, I would think. From here, we need to be expecting all kinds of different viruses. This is going to happen again, I can assure you.
If it does happen again, Europe will need to have a strategy and a better early warning system in place. Otherwise, the risk is more pain and more grief.
Ich war erfüllt, mein Leben war erfüllt mit ihm und jetzt ist da wieder so eine Lücke. Aber ich weiß nicht, was ich dazu sagen soll, wie ich das nennen soll. Es ist einfach da, ne?
The human tragedy of Ischgl highlights dilemmas posed by COVID to governments the world over. 1 year on, many of us are still left wondering, if calamity strikes again, can we now trust those in power to make tough decisions fast and put our welfare first?